certified cabrón, soy un Sancho King. Así que dale, y despacito, porque lo mueve, pero muy rico. Así que dale, y despacito, porque lo mueve, pero bonito.
Soy el Sancho, bailo tango, masco chicle, pego duro, tengo viejas de a montón. ¡Tururú! What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Sancho Fantasy Football. This is the third video of the 2020 recap series, where I discuss and elaborate my thought process behind these picks and also show you the results. I would like to apologize ahead of time. For some reason, my phone did not save the screenshots of the draft results or the email where they show the results. However, I do remember my top 8 picks, which are arguably the most important picks of your rosters. Now, in this league, I was first pick overall. And with my first selection, I ended up selecting Mr. Christian McCaffrey, CMC for short. CMC has been that ideal fantasy football player where he had never missed a game in the NFL and really effective only in the rushing and the receiving, which is gold for PPR leagues. Just to give you a little background, in 2018, he was actually averaging 24.1 fantasy points per game for a grand total of 385.5. Again, did not miss a game. In 2019, he was averaging 29.4 fantasy points per game for a grand total of 471.2 fantasy points. And again, did not miss a game. Now in 2020, unfortunately, he did get hurt and he only played 3 games. And even in those 3 games, he scored 30.1 average per game and then 90.4 total. It's unfortunate, but again, guys, injuries will happen eventually. It is football. So I did not know that at that time. However, I do the draft running back heavy. And my next pick might actually be more surprising. So this was a 10-man league. So give and take 18 picks later. Or 19. I cannot believe this guy fell to me. I don't know how. Other players didn't even know how. Other members on the league didn't even know how he fell. But he was there. I hit that draft button so fast, it was not even funny. So, at that pick, number 24, I had landed Davante Adams. Again, guys, I was as surprised as you guys are. He was there. And just to give you a little background on Mr. Davante Adams, in 2018, he only missed 1 game. He was averaging 22 fantasy points per game for a grand total of 329.6. In 2019, he only missed 4 games, averaging 17.7 per game, 212.7 total. In 2020 was actually his best year thus far in the NFL, fantasy football, PPR, where he missed 2 games, but averaged 23.6 fantasy points per game for a grand total of 358.4, which is phenomenal. He actually carried my team when CMC was not there. And could you imagine if they were both healthy all season? I would not have lost the game, I think. Okay, so I don't think I need more elaborating between CMC and Davante Adams in my first and second picks. So I'll leave that at that. And now my third pick overall. Now, a lot of guys do not like this guy. And I understand as to why. However, he is, to me, he is that one of those picks where you can get him around this area, which is the 3rd round, maybe 2nd, 4th. And when you put him in, he's going to be that top 12 player during the week. With that being said, I selected Mr. Chris Carson. Mr. Chris Carson, I was actually very fond of since his 2018 season. This was his second year in the NFL. He was with the Seattle Seahawks at that time still. And I remember him just being in the waivers. And in one particular league, I do remember I was struggling with an RB2. And I could not find one, a reliable one. And Chris Carson just happened to be on the waivers, averaging 10 points a game or so. And I couldn't help it. So I picked him up. And I dropped him again because I thought I had somebody better. And I ended up picking him up again. And he ended up exploding for me and actually winning me a championship in 2018 at the end of the season. So with that being said, he does have the stigma of being an injury-prone player, or at least, missing time during games. And I get it, it's not something you want. However, as my flex and a guy, let me take that back. As an RB2, he is perfect. As a flex, even better. He when he does play, he's always that top 12 running back every week on average. And just to give you a little background, in 2018, he missed 2 games. He was scoring 14.4 average per game for a grand total of 201.4. In 2019, he missed 1 game, averaged 15.5 a game for a grand total of 232.6, which was career best or career high. Now, in this year, he did miss 4 games due to injury, and it was expected. I almost see him as like a band-aid player for me. While I knew that even if he came back and played, he'd be an RB1 every week. And you guys are sleeping on this guy. Even in this coming year, he's such a gold mine. You guys don't understand. Take that risk with him. Pick him up. When he plays, he's solid. The Seattle Seahawks are expected to run the ball more, and that's exactly what he was doing in 2019 and 2018. So in 2020, he did miss the 4 games and averaged 15.6 per game for a grand total of 187.8. Again, solid guy. That's my opinion, and will be for this season as well. Just cover yourself. With my 4th pick was a guy that I was not too fond of. However, he's like a Chris Carson. When he does play, he will be an RB1 and give you that type of RB1 numbers. And like Chris Carson, he has that stigma of being injury prone. However, I knew I had to cover myself in the later rounds. His name is Mr. James Conner. James is solid as they come when healthy. To give you a little background, in 2018, he did miss 3 games, but he was averaging 21.5 points per game for a grand total of 280 fantasy points, PPR. In 2019, he missed 6 games, averaging 14.6 per game for a grand total of 145.5. In 2020, he missed 3 games, averaged 12.7 for a grand total of 164.6. I get it, guys. It's not a solid, sexy pick. Again, I just knew I had to cover myself, so I didn't mind it here. With my 5th pick, there was a guy that I was really high on, which I actually elaborated already on my past video. My fifth pick was Mr. Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, again, struggled as expected on my point of view during the beginning of the season. And after week 11, he was startable every week. And I will always be thankful for that. If you'd missed my discussing points, please watch the previous video. So now my 6th pick. So I believe it was 18 picks later. This guy was there, and I knew I wanted him. I knew he was going to be solid. And with Devontae Adams as my wide receiver 1, I cannot help and draft this guy, Mr. Kevin Ridley. Again, I already discussed it in my previous video, but just to give you an idea of how he did in this year, he missed one game. He was averaging 18.8 fantasy points per game, which is career best, and 281.5 points overall. Again, career best. So, solid pick for 6th round. I can't complain. So, Devontae Adams, my wide receiver 1, and Calvin Ridley, my wide receiver 2. Just excellent. With my next selection, right at that turn for the 7th round pick, it was Mr. Antonio Gibson. Now, Antonio, this was his rookie year, 2020. And I knew it was going to take time for him to get used to the whole NFL rhythm and also his system over there with the Washington Redskins. And so this round was ideal for his pick and selection. He had a lot of upside coming his way. He had no other competition. And I knew it was going to be a matter of time before he exploded. And he did. Eventually he did. Just to give you a little recap, he did miss 2 games due to injury. He had 170 attempts for 195 yards for a grand total of 11 touchdowns rushing. Now, for receiving, he also had 36 receptions out of 44 targets, 247 yards, 0 touchdowns. On average, he was scoring 14.4 per game, 202.2 fantasy points total. Again, guys, this is another pick, and there's a little controversial drop later. We'll get into when we get into the leagues, I'll show you to the weekly results. So this was the 7th pick. Now, my 8th pick is a guy that I guess apparently since my first year doing fantasy football, he's been my go-to guy. And I needed somebody safe in the 8th pick in this position. And with that being said, my 8th round pick was Mr. Matt Ryan. Now, Matt Ryan has been, since 2018, he's been my go-to guy. Where everybody's, picking Rodgers, Mahomes, Brady, Russell Wilson, even Cam Newton. Mr. Matt Ryan has actually been, in my opinion, more solid and safe. To give you a little background, in 2018, as I mentioned, he didn't miss a game. He was averaging 22.2 per game for a grand total of 354.96 fantasy points. And then in 2019, he didn't miss one game. And here I noticed that he was being a little more volatile, which is okay. But he was still kind of like my go-to guy. He was averaging 17.8 fantasy points, 267.34 total. In 2020, just to show you again that he's actually been consistent, he didn't miss a game. He averaged 17.5 per game, 280.44 total. And you will see when I have him in my roster that he did become volatile, but also he wasn't too bad overall. He's one of those guys, again, that you're looking for a QB, and all the top QBs, quote unquote, are gone. He's one guy you can pick up. I'm telling you, solid as they come. Okay, so let's get started. As my week 1 results here, I went against the defending champion of the previous year, and his squad had to be arguably one of the most solid ones in this league. He had Kyler Murray, he had Derrick Henry, Devin Singletary, which actually I'm not too fond of, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown from Tennessee, George Kittle for his tight end, Jamison Crowder, which I'm fond of for emergencies. Now he had Buffalo defense, and Tucker from Baltimore, the kicker, which always is pretty solid for the kickers. And here was like how my team was supposed to perform, and they did, for the exception of James Conner. With Matt Ryan going off, solid. Christian McCaffrey, definitely expected. Chris Carson, again, it's expected. Devontae Adams, above and beyond expected. Calvin Ridley, again, above and beyond expected. Jared Cook, expected. James Conner disappeared. I believe he did get hurt. Or did he struggle? But, overall, I won. Now, here is my bench. Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson, Julian Edelman, Alexander Madison, Anthony Miller from Chicago, and Snell. So I knew that James Conner was going to get hurt, so I picked up his immediate backup, which was Snell. So I had him on my bench. He outperformed Conner this week. Week 2, same type of lineup. I just sat Conner and started Jonathan Taylor here. And again, my team did what they were supposed to do, except the defense. It was perfect, beautiful. But everybody did what they were supposed to do. Oh, and Devontae Adams, but you play him no matter what. You just put him in. And then this is my bench. James Conner decided to show up. Julian Edelman decided to show up. James Robinson. Oh, check this out, guys. So this is what I would do. I saw struggles with Antonio Gibson, and I'm not saying it's bad or by any extent. I just knew that I wanted somebody solid and immediate, long season, somebody I can trust all season long. And I decided to drop Antonio Gibson for Mr. James Robinson. James, I saw immediate, I saw talent, I saw effectiveness, and I noticed, and I knew that whoever was going to be the RB1 or the starter for Jacksonville was going to be solid all year. Fournette was that one guy the previous year, and I was just waiting to see who that running back was going to be for Jacksonville, and I took that risk. And then, in my personal opinion, it paid off. Actually, let me read off a couple stats here for James. He did miss 2 games due to injury. However, he was averaging 17.9 fantasy points per game for a grand total of 250.4. Top running back in the league as of 2020. I mean, there was nothing more that you could ask off waivers. This was a steal for me, and he helped me out in the long run. So week 3 came along, and I put him in the lineup, and as you guys see, he was being very effective. Matt Ryan started to his volatile decided to show up. I believe this is when Julio Jones got hurt, so it wasn't as effective. And there was no way I was gonna win against the kid here. He had a really solid squad with Dak Prescott, Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs, Allen Robinson, Tyler Boyd, and Terry McLaurin, and so on. My defense decided to show up as well, Indiana. And then my bench here, Devontae was hurt. James Conner showed up again. And, nothing too impressive, nothing else noticeable here. Week 4, I lost. Not too bad, but my team definitely did not show up. Really got hurt in this game. Marquez, Valdez, Scantling, never again. and Chris Carson as usual. The RB1 type numbers. It's perfect. Yeah, my bench didn't do any better. Nobody really showed up except Ronald Jones, which is another backfield I tend to steer away from. Because you never know who's going to show up or whose game is going to be at that time. Week 5 came along, and I took another loss here. My team, as you see, Matt Ryan started to not be useful anymore. No, I had emergency backups here. I had no choice. And also, Mr. Levine here, his team was pretty solid as well. Devin Cook. All right. And then this is the bench. I had picked up Chase Edmonds here. Jonathan Taylor showed up. Nothing too noticeable here. Week 6 came up and got a W. As you guys see, I was fluctuating with QBs, tight ends, and eventually the defense and the kicker. You guys see the kicker here? Young Ho Koo. Again, is one of those secret weapons that has been since he's been with Atlanta. And I always pick him up off waivers. He's always there. Now, the only reason I tend not to get him sometimes is because I already have like a Matt Ryan or Ridley or the tight end or the running back. So I don't want too many players from Atlanta. And the reason they're all effective is because they're always behind. So they're always, trying to score as much as they can. And if they're in a field goal range, they'll do it. So that's why Younghoe here is getting 20 points a game sometimes. It's awesome, right? Here again, Ronald Jones is kind of like that guy that shows up and then disappears. But he was the better pick here with Tampa Bay this year. Week 7, we got another W. Devontae went off here. And I didn't feel like dropping anybody. So I played without a defense. And it paid off. James Robinson, I think he was struggling. He had a couple of games where he was struggling, so I didn't trust him right away. And I benched him, but it's okay. We still got the W. I picked up Ryan Tannehill. So you guys know how I'm really high on Matt Ryan in the later rounds. Well, the guy that actually, in my opinion, is going to replace him is Ryan Tannehill for me. Everybody is sleeping on Ryan Tannehill. He is going to feast, guys. He's going to be like a top 5 guaranteed in 2021. However, I got him here stashed away. And so this was week 7. This is week 8. My team, I had put Tannehill in there. James Conner being solid. Taylor disappeared a little bit. Devontae is doing Devontae things here. Really struggled. Joe Bernard showed up. Younghoe again. And then Indiana defense showed up. Carson was hurt. Brandon Ayuk got picked up, luckily. Actually, we'll get more into Ayuk in a second. So this is week 9. Had Matt Ryan back in the lineup. McCaffrey came back for the one game and showed up. Devontae showed up. I was just playing around with my roster here. I still got the W, which is the most important thing at the end of the day. James Robinson, I put in my bench. Yeah, look at my roster though. I didn't even know who to start anymore. At this point, the hype was really big on Chase Edmonds. Never again. Okay, I won't say never, but it's just one of those guys that you can't trust. Okay, week 10. Again, playing around with my roster. Carson Wentz, never, for sure, never again. This guy can't stay healthy. Never. James was disappearing. Never again. Chase Edmonds disappearing. Never again. Devontae Adams, doing Devontae Adams things. Good. Ayuk. Jared Cook, nothing to show for. James Robinson, I finally put him. He got me 13. So this is fantasy, guys. It's always not a guaranteed. I always say that it's not always guaranteed. And luckily or unluckily for the other guy here, the defending champion, his team didn't show up either. And he actually had Derrick Henry and AJ Brown in his team. And that's the risk you guys take when drafting players on the same team if they all struggle. Your team struggles. And here's my bench. Ronald Jones was being solid. I was getting more confidence in him. And I was actually okay putting him in my roster. Week 11 came around. Matt Ryan again disappearing on me like usual. When I don't play him, he shows up. When I play him, he disappeared. It was really frustrating. But Ryan Tannehill is actually my one secret guy, and I want to pick up later. And then Carlos Hyde came back from injury. As I had Carson on the bench due to injury as well. Devontae Adams showed up, really. General Smith for a tight end, that's perfect. James Conner. And Yahoo, he showed up again. And I won another W. Here's my bench. Jonathan Taylor showed up. Week 12 came along. And now, if you guys remember, the kid beat me really bad week 2 or 3. And then Fitzmagic was there. He was doing solid. Put him in the roster lineup. Chris Carson, James Robinson showed up. Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley. The defense of the Saints. And, of course, my kicker, Younghoe Koo. Right. And then here's the bench. Week 13 came along. This is the week right before the playoffs. And it was me and the defending champion is potential bye weekers here for the first round of playoffs. So this is where my confidence, I put my best team in because Mars Bandit had that killer combination of Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Guys, they were frustrating to play against. So Tannehill was there. Carson did what they were doing. James Robinson did what he was supposed to do. Devontae did whatever he was supposed to do. Calvin Ridley for wide receiver 2 is perfect right there. Is what you wanted them to do. Jonathan Taylor showed up. My kicker showed up. So this was the ideal scoring for all my roster. Okay, and here's the actually, I did not take a bench picture, but it's all right. So I actually ended up getting a bye week as being the number 1 or number 2. Excuse me, I was number 2, so I got a bye week. And you don't play anybody on the bye week, but I was just like, let me put in my bench just so they can get a quote unquote playing time. And this was actually them. Ryan Tannehill is okay for a QB points for their points. Ronald Jones showed up once again. Cam Akers. Ayuk showed up. Kiki QT was just there, so he was actually doing okay at the end of the season. But yeah, I avoid every Houston wide receiver. Gesicki showed up. Jonathan Taylor was feasting there in Indianapolis. And then the Saints defense didn't show up, and Yahoo did okay. And this was my bench. This was the starters, right? And the crazy thing is, my team scored 143 and was the team that scored the most that week. If my memory doesn't play with me. So this was actually the semifinals. And I played against that Mars Bandit. And again, He had the combination of Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Now, I remember this particular game because this was a game against Denver on Thursday night, and they just kept scoring. I was watching. It was so hard to watch, and they were eating, both of them. They were up 70. Okay, so if you subtract that, 7.8 points. So, yeah, they were up quite a bit. And here was my first player on Sunday, Davante Adams, at 1.1. It was really hard to watch. With that being said, this was the end results. Excuse me. This was the end results of the scores. Josh Allen had scored 37.66. Ryan Tannehill showed up to 37.02. Jonathan Taylor showed up. Cam Akers did okay. Davante Adams kind of disappeared on me, which was frustrating, but it's all right. Calvin Ridley showed up. Komet, never again. Brandon Ayuk showed up. He was my flex. This is what you want from your flex, 20 points a game. Indiana and Yahoo Ku. And then my bench was here. All right, and this was the championship. This was against the defending champion. And this was the end result. You know, Ryan Tannehill did what a QB is supposed to do. Chris Carson did okay. Jonathan Taylor did okay. Kevin Ridley did what he was supposed to do. Brandon Ayuk did okay. Davante Adams is my flex, showed up. Austin Hooper did what a tight end is supposed to do. You know, very average, but 125 is at least what you want to score on a weekly basis. And here was my bench. And just to show you guys, I cut off, out of respect, I cut off the names here. But, I won 8 at the end of 8 straight at the end of the season. 1,700 points for and 1,424 points against. Yeah, guys, here it is. Team Sancho, 10 wins, 3 losses, 0 ties, first place. And I hope you guys like this type of format where I showed you guys my draft picks and how the team evolved throughout the season and also the end results. Now, for the next videos, I'm going to be doing live mock drafts, telling you which players I'm avoiding and why, and which ones I'm drafting and where. So please like the video, comment, subscribe. And I'm also taking special requests for any player breakdowns. And that's about it. So, hasta la próxima. And tururú.
Certified cabrón, soy un Sancho King. Así que dale, y despacito, porque lo mueve, pero muy rico, así que dale, y despacito.